Welcome to our weekly conversations on artificial intelligence with thought leaders in Africa. My name is Zenzele Ndlovu. I am the head of research and market development at Machine Learning Africa. We attempt to provide insight into AI and other emerging technologies and their inevitable impact in transforming business and the broader society. Please check out our upcoming event, the AI Business Conference. You can register for free at aiconference.co.za. Welcome to another edition of our Conversations with AI Leaders, where Johan and I discuss with people that are doing amazing things in the field of AI. And today we have a guest who's doing amazing work. And I'll ask Johan to please introduce Kathryn to us.
Fantastic, Zenzele. Thank you. Like I always say when we start these videos, firstly, there's so many people in our local country doing amazing things, utilizing AI and related technology. We don't often know about them. We think it's all happening in Silicon Valley or elsewhere. And then the other thing that's close to our heart is using this technology to do good. We think of healthcare, we think of education and social justice and other things. And that's why we are so excited to have Kathryn on the chat with us today. Kathryn is a lecturer at the University of Pretoria, so there's an academic part of her life, but then she's also the CEO of Zenzele AI Solutions, using this kind of technology in the field of medicine and in particularly in the field of breast cancer research and treatment. Then there's also community work that Kathryn's doing that's very interesting. So firstly, Kathryn, thank you for your time and welcome to our conversation today.
It's a big pleasure. Thank you for having me again. It's nice to see you again.
And you too. Kathryn, I was so excited when we first spoke a few months back about the realities of breast cancer, or cancer for that matter, in our own country. If I remember correctly, and you must correct me if I'm wrong, I think globally there's something like 1 out of 8 women will have a challenge with breast cancer, but I think in our own country it's as many as 1 out of 2. Is that correct?
I think it's in South Africa more 1 out of 4. It depends on which region, but to put it in an easier layman's term to understand is that the biggest cancer to cause death in women in South Africa is still breast cancer. It's still the #1 reason, and it's because there's a massive lack of education amongst patients, especially in the rural sites, and also a lack of infrastructure at most of the district level hospitals.
Before I hand over to you, Zenzele, what I want to ask you, Kathryn, for our viewers, just a summary of what is the work that you're doing? What is that elevator pitch? Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, there's actually a few. I remember in our last conversation, I never thought that I would say I'm working in this space, but now I am full-heartedly working in this space. So a couple of years back, it was actually still a concept, and to me, just like, oh, this is a pretty cool idea to do on my PhD. And it actually turned out now to be software. So our company, Zenzele AI Solutions, is focusing on accurate and early detection of breast cancers, making use of machine learning and artificial intelligence, or more specifically, the subset artificial neural networking. We can actually, based on ultrasound images, provide a prediction of breast cancer subtypes. So most hospitals don't have the specialists or the imaging to be able to do their own imaging and diagnosis. Most patients wait up to 6 months to get a diagnosis after feeling a lump from rural setting. And that's actually quite an injustice that's being done to women in South Africa. And our software, which is great, is it is actually able to run without internet or Wi-Fi connectivity. And we're also partnered up with Clarius. It's a wireless handheld ultrasound probe that also works without Wi-Fi, which is perfect for rural setting. And this can actually help to provide diagnosis on site and a quicker turnaround time to surgical intervention. And then, my side hustle that you mentioned, the community engagement. So the past 5 years, I've run a breast cancer nonprofit. We started very humble. We had about 40 women locally in Pretoria that attended our education events. And now we are over 122,000 outreach. And as far as Namibia and Zimbabwe and also in Kenya, we've had outreaches. I never would have thought there was such a need, but now having broadened our outreach of our education, it just goes to show how many women are not well educated. They don't have means of being educated. And the website we recently redid, and I'm super excited, we actually added free educational resources for patients on it. So they can complete a little course, and it's short little information about what is breast cancer and so on. And we can also employ them as volunteers in their regions. And they can also then help to spread the message and the education to women in their own cultural context and in their own setting.
Awesome. I like that you're using, AI in a very pragmatic way, solving very pertinent issues affecting our society, improving diagnosis in breast cancer, etc. I was actually thinking about the healthcare industry being a highly regulated industry, and I can imagine some of the challenges that you grapple with in implementing this technology. Maybe if you can, share with us what are some of the challenges that you would face in
there's a lot of joys in healthcare industry now. Joys, I'm being sarcastic saying that, but actually, for example, the POPI Act is now a very big matter, especially in medical imaging. Any other radiology practices, obviously, they store the images and data of the patient on a local cloud network. Now they need to provide assurance to patients that there is a specific security level. How are they actually keeping the information safe from any external sources? Then also, it's actually interesting. I found this out. We're now going through the processes of ISO certification and SAPRA registration, which is so much fun. And with the SAPRA certification, which I actually found out now, is that diagnostic software as our own, in the next 2 years, all of them will have to be regulated through SAPRA. So at the moment, I think there's quite a few fly-by-nights developing software, but it has no formal regulation, no ethical procurement, nothing like that. And I'm actually glad that it's coming in to make it more ethical, because I think a big topic now in ethics is the ethics behind actually procuring AI information. How do you actually still keep that human factor in it, keeping it honest, keeping it non-biased? So that is then also part of the processes we're doing now, but it helps that I'm a type A personality. So I'm always double checking and making sure everything that we do is for the better good of the patient. It's not necessarily for us as a company. And I think for most people working in this space, that should actually be their main focus. Am I doing this for the better good, or am I doing it just for the sake of selling a product? Yeah.
I think privacy is so important, because what is my digital info that's closest to my skin is my financial data and my health data. Not even my geospatial data, because I don't do crime, so I don't really care if people know where I've been, but how much money or lack of money I have and how sick I might be is very private. I want to ask you a two-pronged question, Kathryn. The first, so we're a bunch of dudes now interviewing you. Is the same technology available for prostate cancer? And then secondly, just talk us through it. So you've got the handheld scanner, you do the breast scan, and then what happens? So it goes to image recognition, et cetera, et cetera. So can we do it for prostates? And then how does it work?
Okay, so before I actually go to prostate, keep in mind that 2% of all men in South Africa also develop breast cancer. So it's not just a disease for female patients, and 2% might not sound like a lot, but in a South African context, 2% is a lot. And it can range from anything from the age of 10 years up to the age of 60 plus years. So no one is safe from being diagnosed with breast cancer, but it is less common in men. There is actually AI software being developed for prostate, where they also use imaging, ultrasound imaging, and they actually use elastography. It's a subset of ultrasound imaging that actually looks at their elasticity being sent back from the sound waves. And it actually gives a color code map of the prostate. And with that, they can actually see, is it stiffer tissue? It's more commonly malignant type tissue, or if it's softer, more spongy type tissue, like a color wave signal that it sends back, then it's usually benign. But our next product that we're bringing in is also then for cancers, but for skin cancers. We're very excited about that. But our launch now for the breast AI solutions is in October. Right, so Clarius is actually there's quite a few wireless ultrasound probes coming now into the market. They actually fall under the term of POCUS. It's actually abbreviation for point of care ultrasound. So more and more people want to make use of ultrasound, especially now during the COVID pandemic. Ultrasound in the past wasn't typically actually used to assess the lungs, but they actually found now that with COVID, you can actually use ultrasound to look at the severity of the lung disease. And these wireless probes are ideal because they're very easy to clean. It's not these big, bulky ultrasound machines. It's literally the size of your phone. It's wireless, connects through an app that you actually then do an ultrasound, and it's sent it through its own secure built-in Wi-Fi to your local tablet or your Mac or your desktop, whatever you're using, your tablet. And then this is also then through a casting API. It also sends to our software at the same time. So it does analysis in the background. So if it is, for example, a general practitioner, not a radiologist that specializes in the field, our system can actually help them determine what to do next. Is there anything to worry about? How do I need to follow up, and so on? So it's sort of like a specialist at your fingertips that can help you with the analysis. And then the images are stored in a secure cloud server. And all of the images are also anonymized when it goes through our server, because it's not really worried about the annotations or what the patient's name is, actually just worried about the image. And the whole artificial neural networking process is focusing on the image. And it's gone through about 15,000 images of data validation and training. And then it's able to give you an accuracy of what type of breast cancer you are looking at.
Maybe my next question, Kathryn, considering that you are also an academic, of course, you've been in this space for some time now. I was actually wondering how the education industry is warming up to this technology. I'm just thinking, of course, I've heard that, these technologies can actually do the diagnosis at maybe 10,000 times faster than the human radiologist, which is quite massive. Would you recommend, okay, the first question is, if the industry is really receptive, the education space, but the second would be, would you recommend that the learning outcomes of radiology studies include artificial intelligence, deep learning, and related stuff?
You speak a truth. Radiologists have different, different breeds of radiologists. You have the more older age groups that are quite happy with their own knowledge and not as accepting of AI. And then you have the newer age radiologists that have just finished their studies, and they are more keen on using this. But overall, radiologists in any form of diagnosis has realized that their mass workload, they can't, as a physical human, get through everything anymore. Especially in public sector, they tend to actually, things that are not priority are actually set aside or not even reported, and they only focus on the main priority items. They aren't even able to do reporting for all of the hundreds and thousands of things that they look at every day. But there's a term going around with radiologists is that AI isn't being developed to replace them, but they are going to be replaced by radiologists using AI because it is a certainty. And in the medical imaging industry, AI has actually been used since the 1960s in a much more simplistic form, but it has been used for many years without them even knowing that it had that word as AI behind it. From an educational point of view, I am telling my students about AI every other day, that we actually, in our undergraduate degree, it's actually a whole module that we're planning for final year students, the new 4-year degree that we're now doing for radiography students. There's a whole section on AI and deep machine learning. The fourth industrial revolution it's here. It's not even, it's still coming. It is here now. And it is being developed. Machine learning and AI is part of our everyday life more than what people realize. And it is important for education, and radiologists are actually educated on this during their training. Also at the University of Pretoria, their research endeavors also include this, because they've all realized the value that it actually has for them, because it's not there to make them look bad, or it's actually there to make them look better, because it's actually going to make their processes and their workflow quicker and more accurate. And it's going to be less medico-legal possibilities that can occur, because you have this machine that has been trained by a human. It's only as smart as the data that it's been trained on. And if it's trained accurately and well, you actually have this thing at your own use that can actually help you provide a better service to your patients, and also more patient-centered outcome. You actually have more time to focus on your patient and the clinical presentation of the patient, instead of worrying of just getting through all of your reporting and everything. But from an education point of view, I can promise you all my students at the university know a lot about AI and machine learning, and also the postgraduates that we teach in mammography and breast imaging, those that actually do the breast imaging. I have a whole set where we go through AI and machine learning, and I try invoke a interest and excitement with them to tell them that it's actually so exciting, because you are actually living in this era and you get to actually see it in your own field of study. So I'm hoping that my passion relays through to our students, but it is actually embedded in the education modules.
Okay.
Kathryn, maybe as a comment and then maybe a last question, given our time. You've just said something beautifully, that because I do grapple a lot with this replacing humans topic and job displacements, but you said the AI won't replace the doctor, but it will replace him or her with a doctor that uses AI. I've never heard it explained like that, and it's true for bankers or all kinds of professionals. So it's really something I want to start using in my way of explaining it to clients. Maybe for us to end off with is your community work, and in particularly how people can get involved. Now, I assume there's always financial contributions that's important. I assume it could be equipment requirements. I think sometimes it's just hands to help. But if people who are watching this video want to get involved, and we'll obviously share your details, your website and so forth, but what are the things that you need for people to help you do this and to spread it even further?
So we are very, very fortunate. In Feb, we were one of the SAB Social Innovation Award winners. And it has opened so many doors for my nonprofit. The first couple of years, I was funding it myself, not realizing how big an impact or how much we actually required. And now that we have funding from DG Murray Trust and SAB, it's actually so funny. I ordered, so to be able to train people in rural setting, you need practical models. And you actually get breast models with masses in it that you can actually train. It's like a modulated 3D printing type of breast, but it's very realistic. And I was so excited when I got this being delivered the other day, because for the first time I have the means now to provide to our ambassadors a tangible item that they can actually show to people and let them feel, this is how breast cancer feels like, this is how a benign mass feels like. For people that want to get involved, our website is available, breastcancersupport.co.za. Obviously, donations go very far, because we are all on the graces and the love of people that's also in the field. But breast cancer education is a big gap in South Africa, and especially when it comes to the cultural stigma around breast cancer. A lot of women in rural settings are shunned from their own villages when they are diagnosed with breast cancer, and it's because of a lack of education. They don't understand it, so they try and relay it from a cultural context that they understand, and it leads to a lot of stigma. And if we are able to raise education and make them understand it better, it's going to make the picking up of cancers earlier and also the prognosis better for patients. And that is a big, big passion of mine. And I'm hoping our NPO, I will be an old elderly lady and hand it over to someone else. And I hope that our NPO will still go from strength to strength. But if they want to get involved, they can actually apply for volunteerism on our website. They can also contact me directly via email, and then we send information. We actually employ them as volunteers. There's a small little fee that we pay to them to say thank you. And then they get packs with all the education material that they need to actually go into their communities and then expand it in their own language and own cultural context, so people in their communities actually understand it better.
If you are thinking AI is just a hype, you need to think again. AI is being used to improve patient outcomes, improve our lifestyle, improve the way we are doing things, transforming different industries, healthcare, manufacturing, financial services, just to mention. Kathryn, thank you so much for sharing those insights with us. We really appreciate it.